there was a few times in your career where you only had maybe a few days in between your coaching jobs, so you didn't really have a lot of downtime in between. But when you had some more time, like, do you do any more studying up on, or shadow anybody or do anything like that, or is it mostly just kind of just watching the games or talking to people to kind of stay, because you have not been you've been down to the game not very long, so not like you have to like go refresh anything. So
No, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty knowledgeable about the change, and if there's been a change in the game. Like, I mean, I don't have to talk to anybody. I watch all of them. I see the systems, the way they play, and everything else, and they're pretty knowledgeable about that. So, I mean, you're right. This is the longest I've been away from coaching in my life. I mean, or being actually part of either playing or coaching. And so, I mean, it's but if you stay up with the times, I mean, I don't have to study books or anything. I just have to watch and see what's going on to be pretty knowledgeable, whether the changes that have been made in power plays, the changes that have been made in systems, and how it's going back and forth. I mean, it was only 15 years ago that Guy Boucher was in Tampa, and he was doing the 1-3-1, and everybody, matter of fact, Laviolette was there and in Philly, and they stopped the game because they wouldn't advance the puck. Mm-hmm. And now you look at everybody's doing either the 1-3-1, the 1-1-3. It's almost the 1-2-2 in the neutral zone is morphed into something else. And so, I mean, you just got to stay on top of that. It's the same as D zone coverage. Used to be, a lot of zone, and now it's more man-to-man, where and the defense don't leave the front of the net or don't go above the dots type thing. And that started, I think, more with Bruce Cassidy, and then it went to Jim Montgomery, and Bruce did it in Vegas, and so you see that coming out a lot. So, I mean, it's a lot of different things like that that you see changing, but I mean, not different. It used to be on the penalty kill, for example, it was always either a 2-2 or 1-3. Now it's all 1-3s. Like, I mean, and so, I mean, it's, you see how those things go. I was always studying the power play. So, I mean, you try to see when teams are playing in zone, how to break it and how to get around what they're trying to do. So, I mean, watching the game like that, that's what I study.
And what do you think about the other side of the coin, though? Like, obviously, you're very on top of the X's and O's. What do you think about the changes from like your early days getting called up to Washington to what you're seeing now with how to manage this generation of player? Like, a little bit softer is definitely the wrong word, but you can't really be on them the way you used to unless you're John Tortorella out in Philly.
Well, you know what? And that wears thin after a while too. But I mean, and I've never changed in that way. And I've always believed in one thing, that it's my job as a coach to find what I call the Achilles heel on every player. And first of all, you got to get to know them a little bit. And then what might work with some guy doesn't work with the other guy. I mean, some guys might need a kick in the butt. Other guys need a pat on the back. Other guys, earlier on, you could take ice time away or you could find them. But I mean, I got to find what makes that guy tick. Like, I mean, and when I'd go around the room and talk to them, you look at the guys that if I called out somebody in the room, that, I mean, I want them to say, oh yeah, I'm going to show you. And that's what you want from them. That's the reaction. But some guys now, the younger guys, some of them cower. Some of these guys, when they're younger, have not been disciplined at all, ever, because from 11 years old or 10 years old, they've been, given everything because they're great players, right? And so, I mean, sometimes they take it a little more difficult. You got to put your arm around them and ask them things. For an example, Mike Green, I found out early on in Washington when I had him in Hershey, that if I went down the bench and I started screaming at him, there was nothing. He was lost for the day. So, I mean, I'd found that I'd have to, if he wasn't doing well, I'd have to go up to him and put my arm around him and say, Mike, I need you tonight. You're not playing very well. He didn't want anybody else to know that I was yelling at him. So, I mean, then you'd have other guys where I really believe, and it's whether now or whether it was 100 years ago. I mean, is something that their whole thought is, I won't care about you until you care about me. So I wanted to get to know, their wife's name, their kids. And for example, one day, Matt Hendricks, who was one of my favorite players ever, he had about 2 or 3 bad practices in a row. And I went up to him and I said, Matt, you're not working. What's going on? This isn't you. And he said, well, I got both my kids have croup. I'm up all night. So I just said, you take 2 days off. You go take with your kids, and they not only respect that, they say, okay, you're doing that for me, I'm going to go overboard and do something for you. So, you can call that a player's coach or not. I just call it common sense. If you want them to play your best, how do I get the best out of these guys? And that's one of the ways. So when you ask the original question, whether you're 20 years old or 35 years old, it's the same thing, getting to know them. With Pettersson, it was the same. He was like Mike Green. I got to know him a little bit, and we would talk all the time, and I get to know what he wants and everything else. He felt comfortable telling me these things. So, you have a great rapport. And I think almost everybody, that was my strength as a coach, is having the rapport with the people or with the players. And I might not have been the genius in X's and O's or line changes or what, but I knew they would all play hard for me because they knew I would go to bat for them.
It's crazy to look at now, Bruce. There's been 17 coaching changes since the end of last season. Could be more in the coming weeks because of, after the playoffs are over. And I was curious from your perspective, what do you think's changed the most or led to the fact that there's so many more, seems like more coaching changes each now than there were maybe 15 years ago, as far as over a course of a 1 year span? Maybe I'm wrong, but is there something that's maybe more pressure or the salary cap or just expectations?
I just think it's all the owners are so rich. Okay. They saw Bill Foley in Vegas win, and right from the get-go. And so it's a win now league. And listen, coaches make a lot of money as compared to the outside world, but as compared to what players make and the terms of the coaches, very few of them make money that the owners and teams can't absorb because it's not involved in the salary cap, and they're the easiest guys to go. Every team that sort of has their exit meetings, and you can see it every year, that if the management, it used to be the coaches just had exit meetings and would report early on to the GM and say, did you find anything out in there in the exit meetings? Now the coaches have exit meetings, the GMs have exit meetings, and if the players say, hey, I can't play for him, it's the coach that goes. And I think that's happened a little bit this year, even though they won't tell you. In the exit meetings, if enough of the players show displeasure, or the top player says, hey, I'm going to want out if this guy's back, then the coach is the guy that's going to be gone.
Yeah, that's fair. And you talked about wanting to get back into coaching. Obviously, this being the landscape that it is, if you're sitting there and evaluating potential coaching opportunities, how do you actually go about that evaluation of do I want to actually join this organization or not?
Well, I don't think in those terms. I think there's 32 jobs, and you should be blessed and lucky if you get any one of them. I've never chosen. When I went to Washington, we were in last place in the league. When I went to Anaheim, they were last place in the league. When I went to Minnesota, they had just come off a really bad year where they at one point they lost 13 or 14 in a row and barely slipped into they'd fired their coach 3/4 of the way through. Vancouver, I took over the last place in the league, last place team in the league. So I've never been picky at where I'm going, and it just, you take it and you go, wow, what an opportunity. You either fear it because you're going into a team that hasn't been doing well, or you think of the positives that can come out of it if you end up doing well. And I've been lucky enough in each of those occasions. The only time I've ever had a losing record, quite frankly, is the last year in Vancouver. And I could talk about that for about 2 hours, but I think I'd be in a lot of trouble when it would be all over. So, so I'll just keep quiet about that year. But I mean,
next episode, yeah.
That's like I said once before and got a lot of trouble. That's a chapter in a book that I'll never write.
Let's talk about the positive of that, though. Like, the fans overwhelmingly were on your side as all of that transpired. Like, how cool was it just to see that support from the community?
It was amazing, and I still get it everywhere I go. And I still tell my wife, I can't believe, that the people are still like that supportive of me. And I thought they were amazing. And Vancouver's a tough market, but I mean, it's again one of those things. If you fear the tough market and the tough questions, then you're going to lose. But if you embrace it and think of what can happen if you have success, like, I mean, then it's an awful lot better. And Vancouver it'll always have a place in my heart. I mean, it was a great place. And some of those players that I mean, they got some really good players that were really good people, and a lot of misinformation. When I went there, I was getting calls. Oh, it's a terrible locker room. It's this, it's that. They were great. They were all great.
Well, it reminds me of the fact that what made that situation even more unique was you really get to say goodbye to your players or know what's coming, right? Usually if you're a coach, you're probably like, like in Minnesota, you didn't know what was coming, right? Like for Vancouver, you had that time. I guess how emotional was that scene in the locker room when for your last game? Like, I don't know if you can paint a picture of what that was like. Probably a surreal thing.
Well, it was really, I mean, unique. And I don't know if it's ever happened in any sport like that, where I knew the day that I was getting fired. I knew the day like 8 weeks before, and it was crazy. But I mean, so when the fans at the end of that game stood up and stayed in the seats and gave me the ovation, and the players all came around the bench and tapped their sticks, and like, it gets pretty emotional. And then very, very few coaches of any sport get a chance to address the team after they know they're getting fired. They haven't been fired yet, but I mean, they know they're getting fired the next day. Because, like, for example, in Minnesota, when Billy Guerin told me, it was right after I had a meeting with the players, and before I was ready to go on the ice when he came in and told me. And then, so you don't want to see anybody there, and then you just leave out the back door, and they'll text you or phone you, and that's great. But here I got to address and thank all the players for everything they did and the support they gave me, and it was great. And then each player, almost to a man, I think that maybe 20 out of the 24 guys came into my office and said goodbye to me privately, and I thought that was pretty amazing. I mean, you can't make that up, or you can't manufacture that. It was just real, So I thought, if you got to go, this is as good a way to go as any.